Hi, welcome to the Daiku Podcast. I'm Gary Snow, and today we are doing a game pitch with Marco Serrano, and he is also known as Spicy Tuna, and he's previously made the Mothership Adventures, Knights of Lazarus, Constant Downpour, and today Marco's going to be joining us to share his latest game, Greenhorns, which is a weird space RPG that has dangerously fast rules, and it's an adventure game seasoned with narrative gameplay. Marco, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Gary. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the introduction, and yeah, I think you covered most of the bases. So
Well, as always, we do like a little bit of like, hey, who are you and how did you get started? I know you've been on the show before, but for those that don't know you, tell us just a little bit how you got into games and game design.
yeah, for sure. So I started being interested in games. I don't know, tabletop games. I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago, and I mostly lived on the periphery of it. I would read, some of the like 5e books, but I would mostly like see my friends play, and I wouldn't play too much. And so maybe a few years ago, even 3, 4 years ago or so, I started running games at the lounge that I had in Omaha, and for some friends, and it was just like a real big springboard and just loving coming up with adventures and doing everything that's incorporated with that. And yeah, so ever since then, I really nosedived right into it, and have been publishing here. This is our third year publishing, I believe. So under Spicy Tuna, and like you said, although we started with a system agnostic game, I've just really fell in love with Mothership, and now that I'm less scared and uncertain about my capabilities of actually like designing games, that's kind of where I'm leaning towards a bit more, and hopefully going to be doing quite a bit more of that, starting with Greenhorns, which is a hack of a system, but which is a great way to dip your toes into it. But yeah, that's about my journey there so far.
Cool. And let's just jump right into Greenhorns. So looks like a cosmic-y kind of like fun game. Tell us just a little bit more of how did you come up with the idea for it?
Yeah, well, I don't even I have random ideas like I think most creatives or just most people, and you jot them down. And I had been really interested in Down We Go for a while, which is it's a hack of Down We Go. And the reason why I was so enamored with it is because I like rules-lite systems. The character sheet houses all the player-facing rules, and the other thing I liked is it also has like all the special abilities of each class. So if you're new, you can see exactly what you're doing, and what your crew members are doing. And I thought that was just like a really nice way to do it. And this idea came into my head to, what if we were like making planets out of nothing? And I've done planet building things before. I have a system agnostic table, a zine full of tables called Planet Builder. And so I'm just kind of really into that type of stuff anyway. But like, what if your job is to go out and create planets out of nothing? And like this happens in this like crazy chaos. The planet itself is like rapidly evolving, basically in its own time capsule, um, going from, single celled organisms to intelligent life to super technology. And your job is to bring stability to that chaos that you've created so that it can actually be like a planet within the system. And so that was like how the idea started. And then it kind of added the bit where and we'll talk about this a little more. But basically, there's like this godlike machine, the Creator Machinica, and it chose this planet, Cruxor, and Kruxians to steward the creation of life because it's really boring doing it on your own. And it's really interesting to see how fallible creatures who are intelligent try and grapple with all this power and usually fall to their hubris. And so, yeah, that's like kind of the all encompassing part. But yeah, you're building planets, and so all kinds of things can just like occur, anomalies, and yeah, that's kind of the crux of
And
it.
And why did you choose like Down We Go as the baseline is for the mechanics?
Well, it's honestly one of the it's one of the like open source systems that seemed to really like fit my mind to hack easily. So I was actually working on a Karen hack first, which I was really enjoying. I was working with the same artist, Diego Acevedo, and I was like figuring things out, and it was going pretty well. But then Down We Go, like I said, is like you kind of start with the character sheet, all the player facing rules that you need, and then um, I think one piece that really made me fall in love with it was like the lore as loot. So they have whether it was Marcus or Tony in development that had added lore as loot, that really stuck out to me. Where players kind of create a lot of the world, and I actually had a chance of playing um, Down We Go with the Cloud Curio crew who did Monstrous and Tony who ran it for us. And I was like, wow, like this is like the narrative aspects of it and being asked to like fill in different areas of like the room and things like that. I just really enjoyed. Um, and so it was just one in between like being the one that kind of clicked easiest for me to hack, and then also just like the narrative aspects to me, just like a really interesting way to like level up potential gameplay, or kind of like the way I treat it in Greenhorn sometimes is like it's like a secondary game almost. Um, and yeah, I guess I'll just say why. Sorry, I'm a little rambly, but yeah. So the way I interpreted Laura's loot for Greenhorns is, um, so the game's about building planets, and you gather loot as you go through these like planets to stabilize. And what you do with that loot is basically an object from that world that has recorded a part of that world's history. So on your way back from mission, you as a crew get to define things like what was like legendary um, warrior of the planet, or what was a minor creation myth that survived, generations on that planet, or what was, a major technological breakthrough that like changed the world in some way. So all these like random questions can be asked and answered, and just like developed in this way that like defines what that world was like. And I really love that part of the narrative aspect.
And that's like part of that collaborative storytelling, and also it helps build your characters up in the history of the worlds, and the immersion, I'm assuming, can really come through because like you have a tied history to the adventure, and legendary tales of adventure. You talked about character creation, and you talked, and on this slide we're quick character creation. So how long does it take to actually make a character?
So for people who have never like seen it before, I think we're averaging around like 10-15 minutes or so, answering a few questions. And so Greenhorns is built on the chassis of Together We Go, and there's definitely some elements from like Mothership as well, that you can see both in design and in or just a little bit in design, and then in the mechanics and how things have changed, as well as just because that's kind of what you do when you make systems is you kind of mash stuff together and you change things up. So yeah, so basically, the right hand side, most people would be able to build a character, but the left hand side just has a little bit more information there for you, and it kind of, in larger words, the disciplines are these four: Blast Master, Potion Doser, Conjure Mage, and Light Witch. Then you have like where your levels go, and then your certain skills that you get to apply. But essentially, you start by choosing. You have 3 levels to dispense between up to 2 disciplines. So you can have 2 levels in Blast Master and 1 in Light Witch, or you can go all in on Conjure Mage, or however you want to do it. And then for each level that you have, you get to apply. You get to fill in 1 skill slot. So you get to use right off the bat. You have like 3 really good skills that automatically succeed. And so Um, so that part I think is like fairly straightforward. But yeah, it's kind of a game of glass cannons. And that's how I saw Down We Go 2, which I was really interested in. Is like you have 3 auto hits that do like really good things, and then otherwise you're squishy, you know.
And then part of the, I guess, the world building of it is, as we see here, remember you are chosen, you are greenhorns. So what is a greenhorn and what is the world that they inhabit?
Yeah, so again, players are Kruxian, which is like a humanoid alien species. Um, the world they inhabit is Cruxor, and Cruxor it has just gone through like this major development. It has seen like incredible growth in technology and just like people abilities. The people Cruxians have changed as well, and they've changed because they've been in proximity and have been chosen by the Great Machine, which is the Creator Machine, this godlike machine, who has come there and basically let them test it out, be with it. And so there's like this built-in motivation where being Cruxian, you are motivated to want to go on these planet missions. But the problem is when you make something out of nothing, when you like create extreme chaos and try and stabilize it, it's extremely dangerous. And so the planeteers or the planet builders are often die on mission. It's a very lethal game, and so it's called Greenhorns because you're new. There's like Greenhorns are replacing the veterans 10-1, and you have this like motivation to do so. And so there's going to be kind of 2 ways to play. They all work with the same mechanics, but the first one is building planets, as I mentioned before. The way you do that is you like choose which planet layers you're going to build, the size of the planet, and that's how many basically like dungeons you will go through. And to build that, and then you, like I said, you tell the story of the world on your way back. You remember the fallen, and you do that. Now, but the problem is when you're stabilizing these planets, sometimes anomalies or creations escape, and they might hate their creators. And so there's also like bounties, which will be a little bit more along the veins of like longer campaigns, sandboxes, hunting down these creations who want to do crux or harm. So there'll be a lot more like story behind the monster there, where I think the dungeon delving into Together We Go currently, and then like Greenhorns, it's a little bit more like surface level for the enemies, where like the world building and the shared storytelling happens like in your adventure. And so the bounty will bring that back, a bit of like more lore behind the monster, like what's happening, why is this, the motivations behind him, and be much more like interesting in that way. So but
Sorry, I cut out there for a second. The
no, you're
internet.
good.
Okay, good. Um, and so when you look at this, I mean, the art is fantastic. Tell us a little bit about the artwork that you've got going on here.
Yeah, so again, I'm working with Diego Acevedo, who is an animator in Mexico, and Diego's been wonderful to work with. So um one thing that I try to do with the skills and with the disciplines is to make sure that at least some of them uh, you get to kind of personalize in your own way. So one streamlining aspect of Together We Go games that I really enjoy is like flat damage with weapons, and then like just the skills are flat damage. But for instance, like the Blastmaster, the way that the Blastmaster works, and that's what you're looking at right now, is the Blastmaster actually has like grafted weapons on them and like cybernetics. So you might have an ability that does like a ton of damage or like takes out like hordes of swarm units. But one Blastmaster might describe that as like something closer to like the Needler from uh like Perfect Dark, where it's like a bunch of like purple crystals shooting at it, and the other one might have something like more acoustic or something that like maybe like a ton of like tiny missiles shooting out from it, all those types of things. So um, so that's like one thing that is like variable, or like you get to make your own out of your character. And so yeah, Blastmaster is like that. Potion Doser as well. Conjure Mage are like Green Lanterns. So everybody who uses like the Conjure Mage, like they're making constructs out of energy instead of light. But they get to define exactly what their like exoskeleton armor looks like, or if they're making, again, if they're like shooting a bunch of things, just like Green Lanterns have their own like kind of mainstays of who they are. They get to define that as they're using the skill. And yeah, so
That's always a little bit difficult. Like I know I've played a couple superhero type games where like the Green Lantern ring power comes up,
yeah.
and how do you like construct that kind of power and limit it, but provide the foundation that they can like really choose what they want to do with it?
Yeah, so honestly, Conjure Maze was actually probably the hardest skill to write, because yeah, when you're thinking about that like style of move, it's like, yeah, you can just make anything. So like, but you don't want to define it too much. Like you don't want to be like you're making a bus, or like you're making like whatever. So we landed on, for the skills, we have like intricate mechanisms. And so that, for instance, says like make apparatus, launch, slash move, slash entangle, slash etc. level enemies. So somebody might make like a trebuchet, like it has a little bit enough there to kind of give you an idea of what you can use it for. You can make a trebuchet or like a giant net. And then I've had people use it to like just, instead of against enemies, they've used it to, it's intricate mechanisms. Like, can I just use this to make, something to open up this lock? And I was like, well, of course, like that uses an entire skill, but just gets you through a certain phase. So it's like still really powerful, but you use something that could have been really helpful for something new. And so that's how I especially run Greenhorns. And it's in like it's suggested as well with the narrative tools and the Rocketeer rules, which is what we're calling the GM. Which is like, like the skill is written should always be up for debate. And so in some way, just like a lot of OSR games, the referee makes the call, but the player, can always just bring up, like, hey, can I be able to do this with what I'm looking at, or whatnot. And so I definitely play it pretty loosey goosey, because one of the main pillars of Greenhorns is just like the unexpected. Um, since you're doing these creation missions, there should be many things that are just surprising in a way.
And then speaking of the missions, we talked a little bit about the planet creation, and here's an example of that. Can you just kind of talk us through what we're seeing here on the screen?
Yeah, so it was really nice introducing this like godlike machine, because there's a lot of like tropes and um, the belief of a god that just fit the story really well. So for instance, like when you're making a planet, so a dwarf planet would have a single layer. So you would see the shimmering layer. And when you go to build that planet, or even when you start building that planet, you have access to some information. You know that it's the shimmering layer, and you have these other adjectives. So for the shimmering layer, it's fluid, illuminating, rapid movement, and flickering. So that's like kind of what you have to go off of. And as soon as you go in, you start experiencing the layer. And generally, the way I write the layers is there are like certain themes to go with. And so as you're experiencing the layer, it might feel one way to one crew, and it might feel like completely different to the next. Um, and because these layers should be used multiple times, if you're building multiple planets, you might have the uncanny layer and then the shimmering layer, or you might have both maps of the shimmering layer. And so each layer has a lot of versatility in it. There's 3 different bosses. You only run with one every time you play it. And then there's 10 additional threats, swarm threats and large threats. And you usually have like 3, maybe 4 of those. So, and then there's 4 NPCs. You run with 1 or 2 of those. And then there's some other things like what you see site-wise, snags like bursts and tricks and blocks, and then different loot. So, and then 2 different maps. So the first 2 times that you run through a layer, it will completely feel like almost completely different, but still working off that like shimmering, fluid, illuminating. If it just fits that feel. And then the third time, you might have some recognizable elements, but the boss will definitely be different. And there's probably a new NPC. There's, maybe you haven't experienced these threats in a while, stuff like that. So it's really built to be versatile, and easy to fill out. I I made this little.
Here, hold on. Let me. I'll move this off so everybody can see that a little bit better.
Yeah, I should have put this in too. I made this little print off sheet, and so basically it's like a blank map, and I ended up filling it in. This is what I did for when I ran on the weekly scroll, and then there's 1 through 12 here, and so you can fill in your planet layer from what you're using from that little 1-page dungeon, or spread, because it's going to be different every time. And some people like to prep. It's definitely one of those games that you can randomly roll. As soon as you enter a chamber, you can roll to see what threat will show up. But some people like to prep, and since I was running a game on stream, I prepped a little bit and figured it'd be nice to use my own tools too.
And so, how do you foresee it? Like, obviously, we've talked about like the tales or the legend and the lore as loot, but death is around every corner. And so how is it kind of more one-shotty and hope that you survive to tell the tale of another day, or like what kind of gameplay is it going to be like? How often do characters die? How long do adventures go, and how long does the lore continue?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter is going to be like 100-ish pages of hardcover, and it's that big so it can play as both. I kind of told you before stream, I'm actually kind of surprised, like for a single spread, that layer, and only using like half of the information on there. Every time I've ran it, it's usually like 2.5, 3 hours, and sometimes we've had to even compromise on just the finishing, just because it's been, how much we experienced with it. So I think the planet layers work really well as a one shot. But they definitely, one thing I didn't share with you is there's like a planet selection screen. So basically like a job board. So a single layer is kind of like a one shot, and that's like a dwarf planet. But if you're building like a giant, a gas giant, there's like 3 layers in there. So you're going to have a mini campaign going through. And I have like built-in rules for, I think it's when you finish a planet layer, you recover 1d3 skill slots. So you might not recover all of your skills, but you get like progressively harder. And so for your level 3, which is essentially your beginning character, it's pretty difficult to make it through like a single layer. You pretty much only want to build dwarf planets until you've leveled up. And then, like I mentioned before, the bounties will offer longer gameplay. They'll automatically be at least short campaigns, if not, 6 to 7 session games, depending on how you're doing it.
And for those that want to learn more, you've already got a 30-page Quickstarter that's available now. I'll have the links in the description if they're not already there. And just tell us, so what can people expect to find this, and tell us a little bit more about how it's going to lead into the Kickstarter.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm ecstatic to have a quick start out. And the way I view quick starts, at least, is that they're fully playable. There's 2 planet layers in there, which is about 12 to 18 hours worth of gameplay. As I mentioned before, just being able to play them in variable ways. And that will be free forever. And it'll even be updated to be larger. Currently, it's 30 pages. There'll be some bounty rules in there, at least some more about Kruxian, which is missing because that's like your home base, your shore leave. And that's kind of like an infinitely large planet that you can experience whatever you want. Right now, there's like no information there for Kruxian. So yeah, it's like fully playable for basically the planet building missions. And then the way then the Kickstarter is in, I believe we're shooting for January 12th. but I put it January 2024 just because, things change.
Things happen.
Yeah, things happen.
Things happen.
So, but yeah, we already have the rules play tested really well. Having it out in a quick start is really helpful because you get feedback from that. And I'm really excited to have so much done before the Kickstarter, although there'll be a lot more going into it, but mostly building out like playable content. So.
Cool. And do you have it? Is it premature to know the tier levels or anything like that, or special first day backing or any kind of fun things?
Yeah. So it's not too premature, but nothing's in stone.
Yeah, things change. It's still a month away.
Yeah, it'll be a big. Well, I always do like A5 or half digest books, but so that size, but 100 pages. We're looking at about $35 for the book itself. And then I'm tossing around the idea of potentially doing an alternative cover and then some discounts if you get both. I've talked to Diego. So one concept about the Creator Machinica is it sends like fragments of itself or copies of itself. So Diego's illustrated like 10 different designs for this like grand God machine. And so there'll be like a really cool poster with all those designs on it. And so that's going to be 11 by 17. I'm researching the tubes and stuff now and pricing for that. I've been wanting to do posters forever. And then patches. I love patches. I love all the like extra stuff for it. So there will definitely be like all in tiers, but anywhere from like 35 probably to like $70. We'll get you like all the goodies or both covers or whatnot. So
cool. Well, I think it's looking really exciting. I've downloaded the Quick Start, and I'm anxious to kind of get it to the table and learn more about like how you can create characters and just the planet building. It kind of seems like a fun thing. So Marco, thank you for coming on the show and sharing a little bit more about Greenhorns. And once again, all the links are in the description below, because get out there and support your indie game designers like Marco. And before we leave, do you already have other plans for this, or are you going to try different things?
Yep. So we'll be Greenhorns, the hardcover, and then there'll be a book of bounties called Killings on Kruxian, and then another supplement with like extra planet layers and stuff. So a lot planned. Definitely going to be keep on building on it. So
cool. We got a nice comment below from JP, and love your channel too, JP. So thanks for popping in here. So if you are an indie game designer and you want to get on our game pitch show just to kind of share it out to the world, visit daikugames.com/game pitch and tell them that Game Pitch Gary sent you. And away we go. Thanks, Marco.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey friends, are you looking for a game that is not Dungeons or Dragons? Well, we got exactly what you need at Daiku Game Pitch. We got zines, we got OSR, we got adventures. But wait, there's more. We got solo games, we got journaling games, we even got card games and dice games. Oh hell, I don't even know what kind of game this is, but we got it. And if you visit us in the next 2 minutes, you're gonna get all the Zine Quest, Zine Months, Itch Fund, and Backer Kits Kickstarters that you can handle. Visit us at www.daikugames.com and tell them a Game Pitch Gary sent ya.